What's up, kittens? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Princess, and I'm delighted to have you. Today, I just wanted to talk a bit about my own personal choices of sober living and how that relates to my personal ethics and mindset of supporting the harm reduction movement. For a long time, and for most of my 20s, I would say that I was highly supporting tequila companies across the board. I was the girl that would order a tequila, a seltzer water with a twist of lime or orange, and off I was. Um, it kind of shifted more when I ended up studying abroad in Hong Kong. Before I had ever studied abroad, like, I was just not a drinker and I hadn't engaged in any substances. Um, Up until that point. And then when I had this sense of independence and I was around a lot of people were who were drinkers, that I kind of just like adopted that behavior. And not necessarily was it with or against where I was at that time in my life. It was just a matter of fact of it was very accessible to get alcohol and to be out partying and just kind of like going with the flow. And in my late teens, I mean, I was a big partier. I would go out because I wanted to dance. And I mean, that is the consistent thread in my life, is that no matter what, I'm there to dance. So for me, it was like this new way of engaging with music and dancing and being social was to actually be drinking with everybody. And when I returned back stateside, I continued those habits. I was really just dove headfirst into many bottles of tequila and bottles of wine. And my partner at the time and I, we would go to different breweries and different cideries. Like, alcohol became this like very major theme in my life. And then when I went to grad school in my late 20s, I realized, after I graduated, I realized that I was continuously over drinking for my preference. It wasn't necessarily supporting me. It was helping me cope with many things that I was dealing with in my life at that time. It just necessarily wasn't proactive in aligning myself to where it is that I see my life going and being. And I'm grateful for the experiences, because there were many times during I call them my Hong Kong and Leticia days, that I really was I put myself in a lot of positions that I'm lucky that I made it out, to be quite honest. I was just like very reckless, because I just felt like, whatever, this is what people do, this is what I'm gonna do, this is how I'm gonna engage in the world. So for me, it was like really having to, when 2020, during 2020, I made the conscious choice that I was not going to drink alcohol anymore. I knew that once everything was, shut down and the world was in quarantine, I knew that I had an insight that if I knew that if I continued to drink, that it was going to be a terrible experience for my mental health. So I just gave up alcohol. I stopped drinking wine, I stopped drinking tequila, and I just was like, no, thank you. And for me, I think that allowed me to have a lot of clarity of what the heck I was running away from, because I no longer was just literally drinking. I was sitting with my own emotions, and I was sitting with the discomfort of different experiences that were coming up. And also during quarantine and this whole world experience, I took it upon myself that I exchanged alcohol for self-development. So I really just dove deep into who the heck am I, and what is it that I want to do in this world, and how can I better serve myself and be in service to others. So for me, I really got into harm reduction and applying those principles to my life. And if you don't know what harm reduction is, the easiest way that I like to explain it is, I'm going to do what's best for me, and you can do what's best for you, and I'm not judging anyone, and my way of life is not any better than your way of life. It's just, that's how we are living our lives. And I can very easily be around people who are drinkers. I can be around people who use different substances. it's not a problem for me because I have no judgment. All I say is stay hydrated and be safe. And I feel like because I was able to experience the alcohol abuse and disharmony that I experienced in my 20s, which also, like, all drinking wasn't terrible drinking. Like, I have some amazing memories of different places where I've traveled to and friends, and just like having these really joyous experiences where alcohol was the substance of choice in that moment. I just understand that for me, alcohol does not promote my divine purpose and align with my values anymore. It's just not something that I'm interested in. So, living a sober life and experiencing the world in a different way. Like, I even went to Napa during this time of my life, and it was really interesting to see how sober living is actually not really promoted or that well supported at times. Like, I'm a big person for Shirley Temple, so like if I want to get a drink, like that's typically what I'll get, a Shirley Temple, or see if there's like a mocktail or something. However, a lot of times it's not even on the menu. It's like having to ask, like, hey, can this drink be made without any alcohol? Or, and if it's not, like, what are your other options? Which I find to be like a really curious thing, because a lot of people have sober moments in their life, whether they are they are embracing a sober life. If they're pregnant, maybe they're on different medications, whatever it may be. And for me, it was interesting to be on the one side where I was indulging in the alcohol use and experiences, and then on the flip side now being like, okay, well, what is the world like to people who aren't drinkers? And I'm really grateful that as I've progressed on my journey and like continued to become more self-aware of how alcohol has not helped me in my life and other ways to cope, it has really given me this sense of like complete clarity. And that was something that I had not actually anticipated, because when I reflect back of like why was I being so crazy with the alcohol, it was because I was running away from a lot of stuff from my childhood and different experiences and relationships that I had engaged with and didn't properly process out of my system and like out of my energy field. And once I was able to do that, I was able to align with other people who were at this new frequency that I had found myself at. And that to me was like such a beautiful gift to myself from source, to be like, okay, no more drinking, no more alcohol. Now this makes space for all of this. Also, my bank account was pretty happy because I wasn't spending hundreds of dollars a week going out to dinners and drinking and partying and all of this stuff. Like, I saw like an effect across the board in all the different aspects of my life: health, wealth, spiritual, mental, physical, like all of these things. My life changed for me in a more positive direction by not drinking anymore. And going back to harm reduction, I personally don't care if people drink. I know it's like a multi-billion-dollar business. Like, people literally are coming up with new drink ideas all the time. I have family members who work in the industry. However, I really take a moment to step back and see, like, what is my relationship with this substance, and how is that playing in my life, and is it helpful or is it harmful, and or is it neutral? And for me at this time, I know that my relationship with alcohol is non-existent, and I've chosen that, and I'm really happy about my choice, and I really am grateful that I've been able to have this time of the past 2 years of really being able to reprogram my relationship with different substances, as well as open my self up, my energy frequency up, to other people who share similar values, and just seeing like how life can be without alcohol. And with harm reduction, like I said, like, I have no judgment for people who do or do not want to drink. I'm really just a supporter of, you do you, this is your life, whatever feels best for you. I also feel like, in the sense of sober living, that there isn't always like people talking about, well, what do you do if you're not drinking when you go out? And I feel like that because my late teens were sober living without me calling it that, because I was the one that was getting the seltzer water and the pineapple juice, and you could see me on the dance floor in the beginning of the night, and I was, having to be dragged out to leave. And now to kind of like come full circle and be like, okay, now that I'm in my 30s, like, how do I want to continue on this journey? And especially now, like, I'm very conscious about this, of how alcohol affects the body in general. And I think that, like, along with harm reduction, a big portion of that is also just being knowledgeable of what is going in and out of my body. And I do the same thing with food as well, not just alcohol. Like, I want to know if I am going to eat corn, like, what is the repercussions of corn? Is it helpful? Is it harmful? Or is it neutral? And if I eat corn a little bit or a lot of it, which, how does that influence my body in general? And for me, that's also like another aspect of sober living, is getting to understand and learn my own emotions and the way that my body is actually feeling, without trying to cover it up with something else. Like, truly being like, okay, if I am eating this or I'm drinking this, okay, well, now what is it like for my body? And what is it like the next day or 2 days after? Like, what are the repercussions, positive or negative, of having that experience? And with the sober living and removing alcohol from my life, I really feel like it has helped me be more confident in my ability to say, I'm not going to do this, or I am going to do this, because I have a much clearer sense of who I am and what is it that I am seeking and looking for. And for me, like right now, like, I enjoy getting up at 5:30 in the morning. And I know that in the past, that when I have engaged with alcohol, 5:30 a.m. wake-ups were not always so easy. And trust me, I had a lot of them because I was really big into CrossFit, and trying to go to a 5 a.m. class or a 6 a.m. class sometimes was not possible because I was too hungover, or my body was feeling too, like, blah about it. So really, just like for myself, like, sober living has been a really great access point for me to get in touch with myself again, and to really understand, like, who I am, what are my values, what is my divine purpose, and what are steps that I can take to continue being, not focusing on my past self and not even focusing on my present self. How can I focus on my future self, and what does that life look like? And for me right now, it's not with alcohol. And I'm really grateful that I feel comfortable and confident with my decision, that when I do go out, I don't feel any type of peer pressure, and that I can effectively state my boundaries with people. Like, I don't drink. And I even just recently met somebody, and I was telling them, they were like, hey, we should go get a drink. And I was like, as long as it's non-alcoholic, I said, let's get some juice or something. So for me, it's also just like learning how to engage with people without it being triggering for them, because since I know where I'm coming from, a harm reduction standpoint. Other people who just meet me might see it as being more of like a judgment call, like, oh, you don't drink, blah, blah, blah. For me, it's like, I don't care if you want to drink 5 glasses of wine. I'm going to support you in making sure that you get home safely and make sure that you're hydrated. However, I have no judgment about that. And I feel like that probably is one of the top 3 major things of, one, like, knowing myself much better and understanding, like, my own feelings and emotions about things, and being able to navigate this world and this dimension within my own boundaries. And also just like being able to support people who and accept and honor people who are not necessarily sharing the same viewpoint as myself. Like, I'm not here to judge anyone. I'm here to just exist, coexist, and hang out and have a good time and create spaces of love and acceptance. So for me, like, harm reduction has really helped me also be able to effectively communicate my own life experiences while also supporting others. And I really am just like happy to be in this place of like just settled in of, no, I don't drink, because I feel like for so many years of my life I was like, yeah, I'll take 7 more drinks, and always pushing the limit and pushing my own limit, and not necessarily a growth way, and more in a self-sabotage way. and to really reflect and be like, you know what, I feel really great about this because I feel completely aligned with my relationship with alcohol. So that's my take on sober living and how that has, manifested in my own life. I would love to know if you yourself engage in sober living, or are you still saying, I love to have alcohol in my life? Are you in the process of shifting and changing, what does it mean to even have alcohol in your life? I'd love to know. So leave a comment below, and I will see you soon. Blessings and abundance.